biology class. The topic before us is the cell. This is the second part of this lesson. This topic is found in the theme, Organization of Life. In this part, we'll be looking at the cell theory and cell structure. By the end of today's class, you should be able to define cell theory, explain what a cell theory is. You should also be able to describe the general structure of a cell and differentiate between plant and animal cells. In the first part of this lesson, we said cells are the basic structural and functional units of living organisms. We said without cells, organisms cannot live, just like a class cannot exist without students. So all living organisms are made up of cells. Cells are the building blocks of living things. They are the blocks that come together to make up a living organisms. And the living organisms perform all their activities through the cells in their bodies. Cells are able to carry out the various activities of life because they contain certain structures and items in them. In the first part of this lesson, we call these structures or items tools, and these tools are known as cell organelles. Cells are very important to science. They are important to us, so it is necessary that scientists study about cells to find out how cells work, to find out the structures and forms in which cells exist. Scientists examine the structure of a cell using a microscope. A microscope is simply an optical device. It is used to view very small objects which cannot be seen with the naked eyes. So we use the microscope to view cells. Remember, cells are very small and they are in the bodies of living organisms. To see a cell and to see the structures in it, you need to view it through a microscope. Microscopes are mostly used in the laboratory. I've mentioned they are used to view very small objects and items. They are used to view structures in the bodies of living organisms. This is a microscope, an example of a microscope used in the laboratory. The first scientist to carry out a research on cells is a British man named Robert Hooke. So we cannot talk about cells without mentioning this man. Robert Hooke used a very crude type of microscope. He used a crude type of optical microscope. There are two groups of microscope. We have the optical microscope, optical, and the electron microscope. So we are saying Robert Hooke used the optical microscope, but in his case, he used a very old type, crude. So with the aid of the optical microscope, Robert Hooke was able to look through a cell, and he discovered that the cell had structures that appeared like tiny boxes. In his case, he saw things like this, tiny boxes, just as you can see in this diagram. So Robert Hooke carried out his research on a cell by examining the structure of a cork. A cork is simply an object that is made from dead wood. It's made from wood, and you know wood is gotten from plants. It's usually you use the cork to cover or to seal wine bottles. So when you open some kind of wine, you find the cork used to seal them. So he picked up a cork, which is made up of dead plant cells, and he examined the cork through the microscope. He did this research in 1665. As far back as 1665, he carried out this research. And when he looked through the cork, he discovered that it had structures that appeared like tiny boxes. He saw things like this in the cork as viewing through the microscope. This was what he saw. Here is the crude microscope he used for this research, and this is the cork. Robert Hooke called these tiny boxes cells. He also noticed that these tiny boxes were separated from one another by a wall. So this is one tiny box, and these are the walls, another wall, and so on. In his conclusion, he called these tiny boxes small rooms. He said, the cork is made up of small rooms, and small rooms were later translated into Latin as cells. So that was how the word cells came to existence. It simply means small rooms. So with the work of Robert Hooke, scientists realized that living organisms are made up of smaller structures called cells. After Robert Hooke, several other scientists went into research on cells. An example of such scientists are three Germans called Theodor Schwann, Matthias Schleiden, and Rudolf Virchow. These three scientists carried out further research on the structure of cells using a more advanced optical microscope. Remember, Robert Hooke was only able to see small rooms separated from one another by a wall. So by the time these three scientists used a more advanced microscope, they were able to see other structures within a cell. These three scientists came up with the cell theory. Came up with a theory that explains the cell. So the cell theory is simply a set of ideas that guide us in the study of cells. It's something we should have at the back of our mind whenever we are learning about cells or learning about living organisms. The cell theory describes the properties of cells, and they help us understand the activities that occur in living organisms. The cell theory states the following. These are the three basic points that we must take note of in the cell theory. The first one says, all living organisms are made up of one or more cells. This is the fact. Living organisms are made up of one or more cells. The second statement says, the cell is the basic structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Without cells, there won't be living organisms. Living organisms carry out their activities at the levels of cells. The last statement in the cell theory says, cells arise from the reproduction of pre-existing cells. This means that cells do not just appear. They don't fall from the sky. They don't come from the moon. They must be produced from previously existing cells. So you have a case where cells divide themselves to give rise to new cells. So you see one cell going through division, trying to divide itself, still trying to divide itself until it is successfully divided into two new cells. So whether a cell is an organism or part of an organism, it is produced from the division or reproduction of a pre-existing cells. These three German scientists also discovered that a cell comprises of several structures in it. They were able to see these structures with the aid of their better or more advanced microscope. And in this lesson, we'll be looking at the structure of a cell and the different items or organelles found within the cell. This brings us to the next point, the cell structure. Cells come in different sizes and in different shapes. Some cells are extremely small. In fact, most cells are small. For example, I have cells in my body. Can you see them? No. You also have cells in your bodies. Plants are made up of cells. Every other organism you think of are made up of cells, but you can't see these cells with your eyes. This is because they are very small. If you want to view the cells on my skin, you have to look at my skin through a microscope. So most cells are small. While we have very few cells that are large enough to be seen with the naked eyes. An example of a cell that you can see with your eyes is the egg of a domestic fowl or the egg of an ostrich. In this case, you can see the egg of a domestic fowl. That's the one you usually cook or prepare at home. It's a single cell, and you can see that cell. The egg of an ostrich is also a single cell. You can see that with your ordinary eyes. But every other cells are too small and you can't see with your eyes. Cells also come in different shapes. Some cells are rectangular, some are round, some are star-shaped, square, and so on. But regardless of the sizes of cells and the shape of cells, all cells are made up of 3 basic parts. Whether they are big, small, square, rectangular, cells are made up of these 3 basic parts. Cells are made up of cell membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. Remember, even though a cell is large enough for you to see with the eyes, if you want to see all of these structures, you must view it through the microscope. So this is the cell membrane surrounding the cell, cell membrane, the cytoplasm within the cell, and the nucleus. So we're going to look at these various parts of a cell, one after the other. We'll start with the first part, which is the cell membrane. The cell membrane is simply a flexible and thin sheet of material that surrounds a cell. The cell membrane, this is the cell membrane now, it surrounds the body of cells. It is made of phospholipid, a phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid bilayer is simply a sheet of material that is made from the combination of a phosphate group, let me write this here, phosphate group, and lipid. So we have phosphate and lipid forming the phospholipid bilayer. This phospholipid bilayer helps to protect the cell. It covers, encloses, or bounds a cell. Cells of all living organisms are bounded by the cell membrane. So you have cell membrane in plant cells, animal cells, bacteria, and so on. However, the cells of plants are also surrounded by a cell wall. So in plant cells, in addition to the cell membrane, there is a cell wall. So when you view a plant cell through the microscope, the membrane you should see is the cell wall. The cell membrane is also called plasma membrane. Don't forget, it is also called plasma membrane. The cell membrane is selectively permeable. This means that it has a way of controlling the substances that go into the cell or substances that leave the cells. How does it do this? The cell membrane has tiny openings. You can liken these openings to doors. You can say they are doors. With these openings, you can also call them pores. With these openings, the cell membrane is able to control the substances that go in or out of a cell. These tiny holes or pores have structures like doors that keeps them shut when they need to be shut. So with the cell membrane, substances do not just go into the cell. The cell membrane surrounds the contents of every cell. Just as you can see, it is like the wall of your house. It surrounds the entire content of the cell, protecting the cell and also giving support to the cell. All animal cells are made up of cell membrane. In that case, you can also call it the plasma membrane. But the cells of plants are surrounded by the cell wall. We said this earlier. The cell wall is a rigid sheet of material that surrounds the cell membrane of plants. We said in addition to the cell membrane in plant cells, this is the cell membrane now, we also have the cell wall, which covers or surrounds the cell membrane. So this is the cell wall, as you can see here. This is the cell wall. What is a cell wall? A cell wall is a sheet of material, is a rigid sheet. See it here, it is rigid. Rigid means it is strong. It is made of cellulose. Cellulose is a carbohydrate compound that is used to make certain structures in plants. So this cell wall makes plant cells hard or rigid, or you can say strong. The cell wall gives shape and strength to plant cells. It also gives shape and strength to the entire plant. Of course, If the cells within a plant are firm, if they are rigid and they have a good shape, plants would also have good shape and they should be strong as well. The cell wall is also selectively permeable. It controls the substances that go in or out of the plant cell. So this is the cell wall of a plant cell. You can see the tiny openings or tiny pores that controls the movement of substance. So you find cell wall in plant cells, you find cell membrane or plasma membrane in animal cells and other cells. Cell wall, let me also mention, cell wall is also found in other photosynthetic cells. So if you see a cell that carries out photosynthesis, you should have cell walls. Now let's look at the second part of a cell, the cytoplasm. Finished talking about the cell membrane, and we're looking at the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid, jelly-like transparent fluid that is found inside a cell. Cytoplasm appears like the white part of a fresh egg. Remember I said the egg of a domestic bird is an example of a cell. So when you pick up a fresh egg, that white part, remember, is a fluid, it is transparent, it is jelly-like. It is almost like the cytoplasm. Sometimes the cytoplasm can get thicker. The fluid in the cytoplasm can get thicker and appear like a semi-solid gel. A little bit thicker, and it's like it's semi-solid. The cytoplasm is a part of a cell between the cell membrane and the nucleus. So this is the cytoplasm. The whole of this part is the cytoplasm. This is the cell wall, and this is the nucleus. So the part between the cell wall and the nucleus is the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm contains three important parts. It has the cytosol, cell organelles, and cell inclusions. All of these are found in the cytoplasm. So it is not just a fluid, it contains several items in it. The cytosol is simply the transparent fluid. So the fluid part of the cytoplasm is called the cytosol. Why? The cytosol consists of salts and water. So it's just a fluid that is made up of salt and water. Cell organelles, also found in the cytoplasm, are tiny structures that carry out several functions within a cell. So in the cytosol, which is the fluid, you will find structures, different structures in different shapes and sizes that carry out various functions within the cell. You will also find cell inclusions. Cell inclusions are non-living materials that are also found within a cell. Cell inclusion includes materials or substances such as fat globules, pigments, and stored nutrients. All of these non-living materials are found within the cell. Of course, they carry out various roles as well. The cell organelles are important. They are key to us because they are the tools found in the cell that carry out or that helps the cell to perform its activities. So we can call these cell organelles the tools of cells. So now we are going to be looking at the various types of organelles found in a cell. Cell organelles include the mitochondrion, ribosome, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, lysosome, centriole, chloroplast, and cell vacuole. If you take a look at this structure of a cell, you find the various cell organelles in the cytoplasm. Remember I said this is the cytoplasm, the whole of this area, the cytoplasm, and the different organelles are suspended in the cytoplasm. So let's take a look at these organelles one after the other. The first is the mitochondrion. Can you pronounce this word? Mitochondrion. Mitochondrion is a sausage-shaped organelle. Remember sausage? Doesn't it look like a sausage? It does, right? It's a sausage-shaped organelle that is found within living cells. The mitochondrion is surrounded by a double layer of membrane. This means we have membrane on the outside and another membrane on the inside. So it is the double layer, outside and inside. The striking thing about the mitochondria is that the inner membrane is folded inward in a zigzag manner. The inner membrane is folded inward in a zigzag manner. So this is the inner membrane, and this is the outer membrane. You can see the zigzag manner of the inner membrane. So when you look at a cell and you find this zigzag patterned organelle, just know it is a mitochondrion. The plural of mitochondrion is mitochondria. Mitochondria. Take notes. What does the mitochondrion do? What does it do in a cell? The mitochondrion is called the powerhouse of a cell. This is because the mitochondrion is the center for cellular respiration and is also the center for energy production. So you can call that mitochondrion the powerhouse of the cell. How is it the center for cellular respiration? Usually, during gaseous respiration, when an organism takes in respiratory gases, be it oxygen or carbon dioxide, this oxygen goes straight into the cells within the bodies of a living organism, mixes up with the digested glucose from food items. It reacts with the glucose that you have respiratory gases reacting with the glucose to produce energy. Now, the reaction between the respiratory gases and glucose to produce energy occurs in the mitochondrion. It occurs in the mitochondrion of cells. So without the mitochondrion, the cell cannot produce energy and it cannot carry out cellular respiration. It is for this reason that most actively working cells, if you have cells, if you're always involved in activities, your legs are always working, you use your hand, use your brain, all of these are actively working tissues made up of actively working cells. So such cells will have several mitochondria because it needs all of these mitochondria to generate energy. So don't forget, the mitochondrion is the powerhouse of cells. Okay, let's look at the second organelle, ribosomes. Ribosomes. Easy, right? Ribosomes are small circular structures that are responsible for the synthesis of proteins. It means ribosomes are the center for protein production or protein manufacture. So if you want to think of where proteins are made in the bodies of living organisms, you should think of the ribosomes in the cells of living organisms. Let's locate the ribosomes in this cell. We say they are small circular structures. So you should be looking for circular structures. They are small. These are the ribosomes. Can you see these dots attached to these structures? Those tiny dots are ribosomes. They are very small. Ribosomes manufacture proteins by linking amino acids together. So proteins are made from amino acid, and all the ribosome does is simply put different amino acids together to form proteins. The process by which ribosomes link proteins together to form amino acids together to form proteins is called translation. Don't forget. And they carry out translation using the information that has been provided by the nucleus. This means that ribosomes do not work alone. They need the nucleus to give them a message. So the nucleus tells the ribosome, go ahead, manufacture protein, and the ribosome goes on to manufacture proteins. Information comes from the nucleus. Ribosomes are found all over the cell. These are ribosomes. They are either found moving freely in the cytoplasm, or they are found attached to endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum is another cell organelle which we will be looking at. So this is the endoplasmic reticulum, and these are ribosomes attached to it. Then we can find some free ribosomes moving around in the cytoplasm. The proteins that are manufactured by ribosomes are either used within the cell or they are transported out of the cells. And if you must look at the structure of a ribosome, this is the structure of a ribosome. Remember, the whole of this is the endoplasmic reticulum, and the dots are the ribosomes. So a ribosome has two chains. It has a small chain or the small group and the large group. This is a large group and the small group. These two groups come together to form the structure of a ribosome. They work together. The small chain interprets the message that is given from the nucleus, while the large chain go ahead to use that information to manufacture proteins. So don't forget, ribosomes are sites for protein synthesis. This brings us to the next cell organelle, endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum are long, tubular, I'll call them channels, or structures are found also in the cytoplasm. Endoplasmic reticulum lie close to the nucleus. Remember, this is the nucleus. And these are the endoplasmic reticulum. They lie close to the nucleus. As a matter of fact, endoplasmic reticulum has membrane, the membrane that surrounds them. And the membrane of the endoplasmic reticulum continues with the membrane of the nucleus. So it is attached to the body of the nucleus. Endoplasmic reticulum are of two types. We have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. We can also shorten them to be ER, endoplasmic reticulum, or the rough endoplasmic reticulum. These are the rough ones, and these are the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Let's find out what they do. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum are responsible for the synthesis of lipids and steroids. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum are sites where lipids and steroids are manufactured. How about the rough ones? The rough endoplasmic reticulum are used for the transportation of proteins made by ribosomes. So when ribosomes manufacture proteins, they attach them to the endoplasmic reticulum, and the endoplasmic reticulum transports these proteins. So the rough endoplasmic reticulum are rough because they have ribosomes attached to their surfaces. So these are the rough ones with ribosomes. These are the smooth ones without ribosomes. Remember, their functions are different. You can see them, rough endoplasmic reticulum and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. The next cell organelle are the Golgi apparatus. Golgi apparatus are channels. They are just like the endoplasmic reticulum. They are long channels of sacs. They are like sacs that are also bounded by membrane. The Golgi apparatus is responsible for the packaging of various substances within a cell. So the Golgi apparatus is the packaging house. It packages different items within a cell. How does it do this? The Golgi apparatus gives off little bits, or rather little bits of Golgi apparatus. Golgi apparatus break off from the end. Let's locate the Golgi apparatus. This is the Golgi apparatus, and this is another one. They break off from each end. This is a Golgi apparatus. Remember I said they are like sacs. So we have little bits of Golgi apparatus breaking up from the ends of the entire structure to give us vesicles. You can call these Golgi. You can call these Golgi vesicles. Let me write that again. Golgi vesicles. So the little bits of Golgi apparatus break off to give us Golgi vesicles. These Golgi vesicles are like tiny sacs. You can see them, tiny sacs. These tiny sacs or these Golgi vesicles simply wrap up a substance that needs to be packaged. So they are wrapped up, they wrap up substances that need to be packaged, and they transport the substances out of the cells. Golgi vesicles can also remain in the cells to store substances. So this Golgi apparatus contains a particular substance which is either transported or stored within the cytoplasm of cells. Some examples of substances that are packaged by the Golgi apparatus are proteins manufactured in the ribosomes, hormones, and enzymes. All of these are packaged by the Golgi apparatus. Lysosome, this is another cell organelle. Lysosomes. Lysosomes are small round bags that are bounded by membrane. Let's locate the lysosome. This is a lysosome. You can see this. It is far bigger than the ribosomes. Lysosomes, they are circular and small. We say they are responsible for the breakdown of food substances. They are also responsible for the breakdown of waste products, worn-out organelles, and other unwanted substances. How do they do this? Lysosomes contain enzymes. And remember, enzymes are used to break down various materials. So with the help of the enzymes contained in lysosomes, they are able to break down these items. You can see the lysosome within a cell. So lysosome contain enzymes, digestive enzymes. This is a lysosome. And with the digestive enzyme, they break down the food that are stored in the food vacuole of cells. Another cell organelle we must look at is the chloroplasts. Chloroplast is found in plant cells and other photosynthetic cells. The chloroplast. This is the chloroplast. This is a plant cell, and you can see the chloroplast. What does the chloroplast do? The chloroplast contains chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the green pigment that is found in plants. Chlorophyll is used for photosynthesis. So all plant cells and all photosynthetic cells have the chloroplasts. Centrioles. Centrioles, these are also cell organelles. Centrioles are found only in animal cells. Take note. Centrioles are simply two sets of rods. This is one centriole, and this is another. A set of rod or rod-like structures that lie close to the nucleus. This is the cell now. You can see the centrioles. They are located very close to the nucleus. The centrioles are found within a structure called the centrosome. Centrosome. So when you look at the cytoplasm, you will see the centrosome, and the centrosome contains the centrioles. The centrioles are responsible for the attachment and separation of chromosomes to daughter cells during cell division. Remember, we said all cells are produced from the reproduction of pre-existing cells. When an animal cell is about to reproduce, the centrioles help the chromosomes of the new cells to separate and attach. So that's what they do. They help in cell division to attach chromosomes. Okay, the next cell organelle we'll be looking at is the vacuole, also called cell vacuole. The vacuole is simply a balloon-like sac. You say it's a balloon-like sac. Doesn't it look like a balloon? It does, right? Yeah. It's a balloon-like sac that is filled with fluid. The vacuole is filled with fluid, and it is used for the storage of substances within a cell. So all the vacuole does is to store substances. Vacuoles are found both in plant cells and animal cells. Vacuoles are found in all cells, as a matter of fact. Animal cells have several small vacuoles. In some cases, some animal cells do not even have vacuoles. But wherever you find vacuoles in animal cells, they are usually very small, and they are more than one. While plant cells have only one or few large vacuoles. This is a plant cell, and this is the vacuole. You can see how large it is. It is so large. Whereas you can't even find a vacuole in this animal cell. The vacuoles in plant cells are also called central vacuoles. And they are called central vacuoles because they are large and they occupy a great part of the plant cell. Just as you can see this, it is very large and is occupying a great part of this plant cell. So it is called the central vacuole. Vacuoles simply store food, they store nutrients, pigments, waste products, and other items within a cell. Okay, now let's look at the third part of a cell. We've looked at the first part, the second, and we're going to look at the third part. The third part of the cell is the nucleus. The nucleus is also considered an organelle, although we usually study about the nucleus independently. We study about the nucleus alone. So the nucleus is the largest organelle in a cell. This is the nucleus. Whenever you look at a cell, the structure of a cell, you will find the nucleus at the center. This is also the nucleus, located at the center. The nucleus is bounded by a double layer of membrane. So you have a membrane that surrounds the external surface of the nucleus and another membrane surrounding the internal surface of the nucleus. What does the nucleus do? The nucleus contains genetic information that is required for the production of new cells, organelles, chemicals, and any other items within a cell. The nucleus is also called the brain box. We call it the brain box. The brain box of cells, because that is where the instruction to manufacture different items, instruction to manufacture new cells are given. The nucleus consists of three major parts. It has the nucleus, the chromosome, and the nuclear membrane. This is the nucleus. All of these are the chromosomes, and this is the nuclear membrane. We're going to look at these structures one after the other. The genetic information that is carried or given by the nucleus is found in an acid substance called the DNA. DNA there stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So we have deoxyribonucleic acid. So it is DNA. So the DNA is an acid that has the information, the genetic information found in a nucleus. This DNA does not exist alone. The DNA is usually submerged or placed in the chromosomes. So this is the chromosomes, and the chromosomes contain DNA. At the center of the nucleus is the nucleolus. Nucleolus, take note of that word. The nucleolus is a site for ribosome synthesis. So it is at the nucleolus that ribosomes are manufactured. This is the nucleolus. It's at the center of the nucleus. That is where ribosomes are manufactured. The nucleolus also contains proteins and RNA. RNA refers to ribonucleic acid. So the RNA is the sister to DNA. It is ribonucleic acid. It's a kind of acid that acts as a chemical messenger. As a chemical messenger, the RNA carries information from the nucleus to the cytoplasm. What kind of information does it carry? It carries information for the manufacture of proteins from the nucleus to the cytoplasm, where ribosomes are found. So simply, the RNA are the messengers that take information to the ribosomes for the manufacture of proteins. So don't forget, RNA are found in the nucleus. The nuclear membrane. The nuclear membrane is the external surface of the nucleus. This is the nuclear membrane. This is also the nuclear membrane. The nuclear membrane is also a sheet of material that surrounds the nucleus. It bounds the nucleus and protects the content of the nucleus. Remember, the nucleus is within a cell inside the cytoplasm. The nuclear membrane protects the content of the nucleus from mixing up with the content of the cytoplasm. The nuclear membrane is also selectively permeable. It has tiny openings, tiny holes, that controls the movement of substances within and out of the nucleus. So the nucleus, like I said earlier, is like the brain boss of the cells, where information and instruction for activities and the production of various items is being given. Most unicellular organisms, or the cells of most unicellular organisms, such as bacteria and some other tiny, smaller organisms, do not have nuclei. Nuclei here is the plural form of nucleus. So most unicellular organisms do not have nuclei. These unicellular organisms only have DNA. You know, the DNA is found in the chromosomes within nucleus, but they only have DNA amongst other structures in the cell. So this is the cell of a bacteria, and we are saying it does not have nucleus. Some bacterial cells have only DNA within the cytoplasm. These types of cells that do not have nucleus are called prokaryotic cells. They are prokaryotic cells because they do not have nucleus. While other cells that have nucleus are called eukaryotic cells. This is an example of an eukaryotic cell. Eukaryotic cells are found in most unicellular, most multicellular organisms. Prokaryotic cells, such as the cells found in bacteria, do not also have some membrane-bound organelles. So they don't have organelles such as the mitochondria. We use M for the mitochondria. Some of them do not have Golgi apparatus. And they also do not have some other cell organelles that are bounded by membrane. So don't forget, take note of the prokaryotic cells and the eukaryotic cells. So quickly, we want to differentiate between plants and animal cells. All of these are multicellular organisms, but there are slight differences within their cells. We'll take a look at plant cells first. Plant cells have rigid cellulose cell walls. Remember, they have cell walls made of cellulose, and it is rigid. They also have a definite shape. Plant cells are usually rectangular. They are mostly rectangular. So they have a definite shape because of the rigid cellulose cell wall. Plant cells contain chloroplast and chlorophyll. Plant cells store food in the form of starch. Plant cells also have a very large central vacuole. Remember we mentioned this, that the vacuole in plant cells are usually very large. Plant cells do not have centrioles. Don't forget, they do not have centrioles. How about animal cells? Can you mention some of the differences now? Animal cells have plasma membranes. Animal cells do not have a definite shape because they do not have the cellulose cell wall. Remember, the cellulose cell wall makes cell walls rigid, or makes plant cells rigid. Animal cells do not have chloroplast and chlorophyll. They do not carry out photosynthesis, so they don't need all of these. Animal cells store food in the form of glycogen and fat. They also have several small cell vacuoles. That's the case where the vacuoles are present. In other cases, animal cells do not even have vacuoles. All animal cells have centrioles. We say centrioles are found in animal cells. So those are the differences between the plant cells and the animal cells. At this point, I'd like us to take a summary of all we've been learning in today's class. We started by saying the cell theory is a set of ideas that guide us in the study of cells. I hope you remember the scientists that came up with the cell theory. A cell consists of the cell membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. The cell membrane surrounds the cell and protects the contents of a cell. The cytoplasm is a part of the cell between the cell membrane, and the nucleus. The cytoplasm is filled with fluid and it contains cell organelles and cell inclusions. The nucleus is the largest organelle in a cell. The nucleus contains information for the manufacture of proteins, new cells, cell organelles, and so on. To find out how well you've learned from this lesson, I'd like us to take these questions. Which of these cell organelles is responsible for the synthesis of protein? Option A, endoplasmic reticulum. B, mitochondrion. C, ribosome. And D, lysosome. Okay, the correct answer here is option C, ribosome. We say it is the site for protein synthesis. The second question, the cell theory states the following, except what are the three important statements in the cell theory? A, cells arise from pre-existing cells. B, all cells have nucleus. C, all living things are made up of one or more cells. And D, cells are the basic structural and functional units of living things. If your answer was option B, then you are correct. The cell theory consists of these other statements except option B. And it is not all cells that have nucleus, because prokaryotic cells do not have nucleus. Okay, we have come to the end of today's lesson. I hope you've learned a lot and I hope you enjoyed it. I also hope to see you in our next class. Thank you.